During a high school basketball game, the Wolves are losing against the Stalkers. With only 44 seconds left, the coach tells Dean to get the ball and pass it to Mason to get the few points they need to win. The boys follow this strategy and soon Mason gets 2 points, although he's distracted when he sees a burned man in the crowd. The game continues and Dean passes the ball to Mason again. He throws it at the last second and watches in horror as the burned man appears in front of him, reaching out with its black hand. At that moment the ball gets the final points and the Wolves win, so Mason is surrounded by his overjoyed team. A terrified Mason runs to the changing room and notices the goosebumps on his arm as he opens his locker. He throws out a bunch of things until only a strange artifact is left. While a voice whispers his name, Mason goes looking for a weight. At that moment the burned man enters the room and Mason begs for more time before throwing the weight on the artifact, smashing it into pieces. Then he looks at the door and is relieved to see his teammates coming in. Later in the shower, Mason hears a noise and looks down to discover black smoke under his feet. When he turns around, the burned man grabs him by the neck and inserts a hand down his throat to set Mason on fire. When his teammates hear the screaming, they rush to the shower and find Mason burning to death. 6 months later, Chris moves to her cousin's house. She's doing some sketching on the windowsill when she suddenly zones out, staring at the ground with dark thoughts almost sneaking in. Thankfully she's snapped out of it by her cousin Rel, who offers to help her unpack. At school, Rel shows Chris around and she shares a look with a girl named Ellie. Chris is assigned a locker that says horse, so Rel explains that it used to be Mason's nickname. Suddenly Dean and his teammates surround Chris, saying she shouldn't use that locker out of respect. His girlfriend Grace cuts in to point out that this school is very old, so all the lockers belong to dead people. While Rel fails to flirt with Grace, Dean realizes that Chris is the new girl and says he hears rumors she got out of rehab after killing her dad. He's interrupted by Ellie, who calls him out for his cruelty. Dean keeps on mocking Chris, who kicks him in the groin. Mr. Craven decides to give Chris, Dean, Grace, and Rel detention for causing a disturbance in the hallway. When Ellie tries to defend Chris, she gets detention as well. Then Ellie tries to befriend Chris, who tells her she doesn't need her help. After Ellie walks away, Chris opens the locker and finds it full of Mason's things, including the mysterious artifact. Hearing some whispers, Chris decides to open it and finds a strange whistle. When she's about to blow it, the bell rings and she leaves for class. In the afternoon, Chris shows up late for detention. When she puts down her bag on the desk, the artifact and the whistle roll out. Dean thinks it's a pipe and tells Craven, who takes a closer look at the whistle. He says it's some sort of musical instrument and identifies the text carved on its base as Mayan. Craven reads the symbols and Grace writes them on a translation website to reveal they mean summon the dead. Interested in finding out the historical value, Craven announces he's keeping the whistle, pointing out that Chris found it in a school property locker. He also lets all the teens leave early, but they have to write an essay on ancient Mesoamerica to compensate. After the kids leave, Craven searches for antiques online and confirms they're very expensive. He's about to sell the whistle when he hears whispers of his name convincing him to blow it. Craven does exactly that and the window cracks. The act leaves him too upset, so he puts down the whistle and confirms the sale on the website before leaving the classroom. Outside, Grace invites everyone to a meetup later. After the others leave, Rel tells Chris that what happened to her father wasn't her fault, but she doesn't want to talk about it. At that moment Rel realizes he forgot something and rushes back to the classroom. He finds Craven's laptop still open with the website displaying the antique prices, which gives him an idea. Meanwhile Chris is approached by Noah, who introduces himself as a youth pastor. He invites her to church while trying to sell her happy powder, even offering a welcome sample. At that moment Rel comes back and tries to push Noah away from his cousin, but Noah easily overpowers him and throws him on top of a car before pulling out a knife. After talking about God and telling Chris he'll always be there if she needs him, he leaves. Rel explains that Noah sells illegal substances to the kids who go to his church and a year ago, a child died from an overdose. In the evening, Craven discovers that the artifact is empty. He searches for the whistle everywhere to no avail. Then he hears a noise and assumes it's the janitor, but when he steps into the corridor he sees a strange figure standing in the darkness. Suddenly Craven is startled by a hand on his shoulder, however it's just the janitor. The mysterious figure is gone, so Craven assumes he's been imagining things. He then returns to the classroom and notices that he can see his breath. When he turns around, he finds a creepy creature with weird goo coming out of its mouth. This creep stabs Craven with both hands to squeeze his lungs until he dies. The janitor walks past the door but doesn't see anything. The same goo appears in Craven's mouth as he transforms into the creature before collapsing. At Grace's house, Rel reveals he stole the whistle. Chris refuses to mingle with the group but can't stop staring at Ellie, who injects her leg with her diabetes medicine. Grace's brother Timmy tries to spy on their party but she sends him to his room. When Chris announces she's leaving, Ellie tries to convince her to stay. At that moment Dean dares Grace to blow the whistle. When she does so, everyone covers their ears because a painful noise echoes for a few seconds. Once it's over, Dean tells everyone to be quiet because he can hear something else, but this is just an excuse to fart. Chris then leaves, so Ellie follows her to invite her to the Harvest Festival, saying it'd be really nice if she came. After Chris says yes, Ellie leaves. Then Chris asks Rel if Ellie likes boys or girls, but Rel has no idea. At home, Chris keeps trying to think of something to text Ellie, but she isn't happy with any of her ideas. Suddenly she sees someone standing in the tree outside her window and gets very afraid, only to be startled by Rel entering the room. When she looks at the tree again, the figure is gone. At that moment her phone pings with a text from Ellie, and Chris panics because she realizes she accidentally sent a flirty text. It seems Ellie liked it though, so Rel steals the phone and sends a cute reply to help his cousin. After Dean also leaves, Grace starts working on her essay. She keeps hearing noises and someone whispering her name, but she assumes it's Timmy pranking her. When she sees the light in her brother's room going out, she realizes that he isn't making the noises around her. Suddenly a creepy creature runs behind her and she hears her name whispered again. She follows the noise and checks behind the furniture, but there's nothing. At that moment a creepy hand touches her and she turns around, only to see Timmy. Grace notices he's too far to be the one who touched her. The next morning, the principal gathers the students for an assembly and informs them of Craven's death, saying it was lung cancer. Ellie notices a girl in front of her shaking and her neck suddenly breaks. This girl then turns her head back to show her creepy face, whispering Ellie's name. At that moment Grace gives the whistle to Chris and the distraction snaps Ellie out of it. Now the creepy girl is gone. After class, Ellie and Chris go to Mason's house because they think the family will want his whistle. They knock on the door only to find it open. The girls go inside and hear old music while noticing all the antiques that decorate the house. Suddenly Mason's grandmother Ivy appears behind them and without saying hello, she goes on a rant about the bank taking the house from her. She explains she traveled all over the world to collect her antiques and studied how different cultures interact with death. On a table, there are lots of medicine bottles. When Chris tries to give her the whistle and says she found it in Mason's locker, Ivy replies that actually it found her like it found Mason and herself. Many years ago, Ivy got the whistle in a back alley in Guatemala. Since then, it's killed her daughter, her son-in-law, and her grandson. The exact translation of the markings is summon your death. When a person is born, so is their death, and everyone's death comes at their appointed time. However, if someone hears the whistle, their death comes early and puts their bodies in the state of their originally planned death. Ivy gives the whistle back to Chris, saying she should have never taken it. In the evening the girls enter the hospital's record room. Ellie admits Mason's death was strange because he burned down in a shower and yet they blamed it on a gas leak. They check his file and learn that he was identified by his teeth because his body was extremely burned. At that moment someone enters the room, so the girls have to hide behind the cabinets. Mason's papers fall and Chris manages to retrieve one of them. She reads that the body's bone structure suggests he was in his late 40s, which matches the whistle lore Ivy shared. This means Mason was destined to die in his 40s from a gas leak and Craven was supposed to get cancer later. The girls need to warn the others, so they sneak out before the employee finds the other paper on the floor. At the harvest festival, everyone is in costumes. Rel finds Grace and finally tells her he likes her, but she gently turns him down and kisses his cheek before going to meet her boyfriend. Dean mocks Rel's costume and Rel has a drink to forget. When Ellie and Chris arrive, Noah tries to bother them and calls them a slur, so Ellie kicks him in the groin. Noah pulls out his knife but Chris steps on his hand to steal it. She then pokes his nose with it and mentions the child who overdosed. Noah claims he doesn't know anything, so Chris cuts his nose before getting rid of the knife. Meanwhile Dean and Grace split in the haunted maze, where they keep getting startled by employees in costumes. Dean finds a wheel and spins it to get a result that says you decide your fate. In one of the many corridors, Grace is shocked to find an old woman surrounded by an ethereal light. When she calls her name, Grace walks away only to find the old woman again. She immediately runs and calls Dean for help, but he thinks she's being silly about disguised employees. Suddenly the old woman startles Grace and causes her to fall, dropping her phone in the process. Then Grace picks up a shovel as the woman raises her arm to point behind her, so Grace turns around and finds her again. She screams as she hits her with a shovel, which causes her to collapse as well. When Grace recovers, she touches her bleeding forehead and realizes she has the same shovel injury as the creature. Then the old woman smiles and stands up by twisting her body. She starts chasing Grace, who runs as fast as possible. Dean worries because she doesn't answer the phone and goes looking for her. Grace panics when she stumbles into a dead end, but luckily she finds a hidden tunnel in the wall. She starts crawling through it, but the old woman soon follows her and grabs her ankle to stab Grace's thigh with her creepy finger. Next she inserts her hand into Grace's throat, causing her body to start changing. After some struggle, Grace breaks free and keeps moving until she reaches the center of the maze. Unfortunately, the old woman appears on the light pole and kisses Grace to finish the transformation. Before dying, Grace manages to pull a handle to ring the bell on the pole. By the time Dean arrives, Grace is nothing but a wrinkly old body. In the meantime, Ellie and Chris find Rel winning a bear for Grace and he tells them that the others are in the maze, so they head there together. They also hear the bell and rush to reunite with Dean. Afterward in the school gym, Dean refuses to accept that the body was Grace's. The girls share what Ivy told her and they both admit they felt death approaching. Dean is still in denial, so Rel calls him out for daring Grace to blow the whistle and blames him for her death. An angry Dean pushes him down and mocks him for his crush, causing Rel to run away. Moments later, a very drunk Dean enters his bedroom through the window. When he looks in the mirror, he's shocked to see a man with severe bleeding injuries. He steps back and accidentally breaks his lamp, so he rushes to turn on the main light instead, only for the man to disappear. Then his parents knock on the door, so Dean pretends he was just having a nightmare. His father scolds him for drinking and driving, saying it'll kill him someday. Meanwhile at Chris' house, she tells Ellie that a year ago she overdosed. Her dad took her to the hospital in his car, but unfortunately a truck hit them on the way and killed her dad. Sometimes she thinks it should have been her. Ellie comforts her before kissing her, and the girls end up doing the naughty. On the roof, Rel sits under the rain thinking about Grace. Suddenly he sees blood on his hands and the teddy bear, followed by a body inside an industrial grinder. However, this is all his imagination. The next day Rel and the girls visit Ivy, who is sick in bed. She explains that to stop the curse, they must transfer their death to someone else by marking them with their blood. When Chris looks in the mirror, she sees her death behind her with a needle in her arm. As her death disappears, Ivy dies in bed. Afterward the trio discusses what to do. Rel wants to pass his death, but Ellie sees it as murder and is against it. They argue about it and Rel ends up leaving alone. At home, Dean sees the news of Grace's death and turns off the TV, still in denial. Suddenly his door opens a little and a creepy hand peeks into the room. Dean throws a chair at the door, getting his parents' attention. He rushes to close the door to keep them out and pushes some furniture to block it. Then the hangers in his closet move and Dean's death comes out to grab his head, putting his body through the motions of a car crash. All the injuries start appearing in his body, breaking his bones and damaging his organs. By the time his parents manage to burst into the room, they find the dead body collapsing on the ground. Meanwhile Chris and Ellie look for Rel in his room, but he isn't around. They find pictures of him at the steel mill where he works and a comic of an anti-hero killing a bad guy, which may be a clue. Outside the church, Rel watches Noah say goodbye to the children. Once everyone is gone, Rel goes inside with a gun and shoots a vase to prove to Noah that he's serious. Suddenly the church bell rings and Rel is distracted, so Noah jumps on him to try to disarm him. They fight until Rel collapses and Noah gets the gun, but when he tries to shoot it doesn't work. Rel hits Noah with a tray to knock him out. Later Noah wakes up to find himself tied to a chair in the steel mill. Rel takes the illegal substances from his pocket and forces him to swallow them all. Then Rel gets some blood from his own hand and pulls out the whistle, which gives his arm goosebumps. When Rel is about to mark Noah, the girls arrive to stop him, but he keeps them back by pointing the gun at them. Noah starts begging for mercy and combined with the girls' pleas, it makes Rel pull his arm back. Rel says that everyone has to die once, which gives Chris an idea. At that moment Rel starts hearing his death and his injured arm is pulled by an invisible force, making him drop the gun. The girls grab him to try to save him, but it's too late. His body starts to disintegrate because he was supposed to die in the grinder. When only half his body is left, it explodes. While Noah passes out, Chris has a breakdown and Ellie has to calm her down, reminding her that she had an idea. The girls rush to Ellie's car to get her hospital supplies as Chris explains her plan. Using insulin, they could stop a heart and bring it back to life with adrenaline. This would count as dying and drive their deaths away. They bring the supplies into the building, where Chris sees her death waiting. Using stuff from the mill, they set up everything and lock the door. Chris wants to save Ellie first, however Ellie surprises her by injecting insulin into her arm, making her realize that her death is depicting this exact moment. Chris' body falls into a tub of freezing water and Ellie keeps it there until the heart stops. As she dies, Chris apologizes to her family. Then Ellie pulls Chris out and injects her with adrenaline before she starts using the defibrillator. Chris almost wakes up, but her death appears in her subconscious and keeps her dead. A desperate Ellie begins to do CPR, but death is keeping a tight grip on Chris. At that moment Noah wakes up and manages to escape the chair. After grabbing the gun, he starts hitting the door with a mace. Then Ellie's death also appears, confirming it was the girl she saw during the assembly. Noah opens a hole in the door and inserts his arm to open fire, destroying the defibrillator and hurting Ellie. This doesn't stop her from repeating Chris' name, which gives her enough strength to finally push death away. Chris wakes up and finds Ellie having a seizure on the floor while her death watches. At that moment Noah comes inside and says God has a job for everyone. He touches Ellie's blood, causing her death to disappear. Then his own death appears and he opens fire, but every bullet hurts his body too. He collapses and his death soon reaches him to kill him. Chris embraces Ellie while it's revealed that a bullet has destroyed the whistle. 3 months later, Chris thinks she sees her death sometimes, but she learns to live happily thanks to her relationship with Ellie. Meanwhile another girl finds the artifact in her locker. During assembly, the girl pulls out the whistle and blows it. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.